Saints fans and who that's from home. It's time for the Bayou Blitz with your host, Bob Rose.
Merry NFL Christmas Eve, one and all. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Fans of the NFL, fans of the Bayou Blitz, and especially fans of the New Orleans Saints. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts for the Bayou Blitz this evening, and we thank you for having us into your homes and over your airwaves on this very exciting NFL Christmas Eve. It is Christmas in April as we are sitting the day before. As Mr. Commissioner Pete Rozelle used to say, the annual NFL player selection meeting is tomorrow, and we are so excited for it to be coming on. I am joined by a merry cast this evening. First of all, always my friend, my co-host, and my mentor, Mr. Kyle Mosley, who we hope gets his name called in the first round tomorrow evening. How are you tonight, Kyle?
They put me on the exempt list, man, and I'm not gonna be there. But yeah, how you doing, Bob? How you going?
Oh, I'm good. I don't think you can be a fan of any NFL team and not be good this time of year. I mean, I don't think it's understating it when we say it's Christmas. Every team is going to get some shiny new presents. Now, unfortunately, some of those, as New Orleans Saints fans know, some of those you open it up and it's either a jack in the box or some kind of dud. But until you open that gift and you see what it can do, it's an exciting time.
Yeah, look, Saints fans, we do not pick until number 62. I have a sneaky feeling that we may be a little higher. Sean Payton may do a little willing and dealing. We shall see. We have round 5, round 6 got 2 picks, round 7 2 picks as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Saints put everything into play.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we saw them make a huge move to move up in the draft last year to get Marcus Davenport. They did that because that was a player that they identified as being a potential difference maker within their front seven and along their defensive line. And everything that we saw from Mr. Davenport during the course of the year indicates that he can be exactly that kind of difference maker. So only time will tell over the next season or two whether that analysis proved to be correct, but I believe that they made the right move. Now, of course, in doing so, they had to give up this year's first-round draft pick, which leaves them sitting, as of right now, with the first pick at number 62, which is the tail end of the second round, like you pointed out, Kyle. And as most of you Saints fans also know, they do not have a third or fourth-round pick either, courtesy of trades for Teddy Bridgewater and Eli Apple. But they do have, for everybody that says that the Saints don't have draft capital, you're wrong. I hate to put it so bluntly, but you're wrong. They not only have 2 picks in the 5th round, 2 in the 6th, but they have their full complement of picks next year, and it's not unusual at all. The term is mortgaging the future to succeed in the present. I don't know if I'd go that far because these draft picks are made for juggling. Your team is going to select players. Your team has done, they better have done their diligent scouting work during the course of the year because looking through all NFL rosters, and we could talk for the next week about late round draft choices throughout league history that have made a big difference, or perhaps even more in the yellow jacket of an NFL Hall of Famer. And that's where your scouting department has to do their jobs to unearth those hidden talent gems. So just because the Saints might not be active on the first night of the draft, I expect them to bring in some players. And I agree with you, Kyle. I expect them to make some moves during the course of the 3-day event as well.
Yeah, making moves, but Saints fans have to realize that these picks are people that may not make immediate impacts as far as a lot of playing time, but we will see these guys as far as how they are either going to be backing up some of the first choices in the rotations, or we're going to see some of these guys in the special teams unit. So it's going to be interesting to see who the Saints select. But I still have a sneaky suspicion that that first pick may be somebody who could have an impact for the Saints coming up this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we got into a little bit of that kind of discussion last night. For those that follow either Kyle and I or our Bayou Blitz pages, then you already know. Or if you're just joining us for the first time in a week, then we're about to tell you. We have a 2-part draft preview, and this tonight is part 2. Last night, Kyle and I were very honored guests of our good friends, and kind of a podcast intertwine for this week's draft preview. But Kyle and I were very honored guests of our friends from Under the Dome, Mr. Sean Williams and Alan Ulrich, who will be joining us tonight. I don't know if we have one or both already on the line. Shout out to you fellas.
They are here. They are in the queue.
Well, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you both very much for joining us, and thank you again for having Kyle and I on last night for a great draft breakdown as well.
Sean, Alan? Okay. Well, I see them in the queue. Look, their mics are not muted. But, guys, if you guys can join us, call back in or let me know how I can be able to reach you. I'll dial you in myself. But, anyway, let's continue until we get these guys situated there, Bob.
Sounds good. Well, I mean, what we started to talk about last night on Under the Dome with Sean and Alan, we kind of broke down the first round a little bit, even though the Saints aren't in it. We talked about a number of the quarterbacks and where we sort of expect them to go, and how really the entire draft and certainly the first 2 rounds can kind of suffer a seismic shift if some of those quarterbacks either drop or some of the trades that we expect to be made to move up and get them. So Saints fans, even if the Saints draft a quarterback, and we'll get into that in a minute, keep a close eye on what happens at the top of that first round, because we all have our own little mini big board of draftable players that we think the Saints should or could or would go after. So, if you're anything like me, I sit there with my little notepad and I start crossing off names and who they went to and shuffling things around. So even if the Saints aren't active tomorrow, you pay close attention, because everything that happens will directly affect this team, and not only what they do through the rest of the draft, but also potentially how the 2019 season shakes out as a whole.
Yeah, definitely, man. I tell you one thing that we really need to pay attention to is the fact that you have guys in that secondary, the defensive backfield, who were not as stellar as they were their rookie years. Marcus Williams, but you still have a lot of potential there, right? And hopefully, I think last year he was overthinking some things, and I really believe if he started allowing his instincts to come out and serve the better for him, he would have made a little bit more plays. Say that as the least. You look at what's happening with Ted Ginn, a little bit long in the tooth now, still speedy, but can we be able to find somebody to be able to spell him or be able to groom for the future? I put it out there on last night. I like the 2 guys from Ohio State, Paris Campbell really being the favorite there. You still have a couple other guys that can be able to come in and make some impacts as well. So all in all, I think when you look at this draft, the depth and the quality of players that could really come in and help the Saints out in supporting roles will be great.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And you outlined a couple of positions that have been hot topics for debate ever since the season came to an inglorious end for the New Orleans Saints. and a couple more. Tight end position, I think, is still very much in play. Yes, the team signed Jared Cook, and I think he's going to give them a major receiving upgrade at the tight end position. But Cook is 32 years old and entering his 11th season. And while he is still playing at a high level, this draft class seems very deep at the tight end position. So maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to grab one of those talented players and perhaps set yourself up for the future.
Right.
Then you look at the offensive line. Teron Armstead is as good as there is at left tackle in the NFL, but I don't think he has ever put together a 16-game season. So that's something to keep in mind. He and Ryan Ramczyk are both well under 30 years old, so they certainly have the power of time on their side. But it's never a bad idea to pick up a talented tackle in the draft, even if it's in a mid or later round from a smaller school. You look at where Armstead himself was drafted, either 4th or 5th round from a tiny little school. I don't even think it was Division I. So offensive line is a position to pay attention to. Yeah. You look over on the defensive side. Defensive tackle, they signed Malcolm Brown and Mario Edwards Jr. Edwards gives you snaps at both defensive and tackle, and Brown is sort of that big presence in the middle. Probably an upgrade over Tyler Davison, who signed with Atlanta. But where are you going to get your consistent pass rushing presence? You still have David Onyemata, and Sheldon Rankins on the roster. Onyemata might be facing a short suspension to begin the year, and Rankins is probably not going to be ready till mid-year because of his Achilles injury. Now, it's good news. You hear he's well ahead of schedule on his recovery, and the Saints did announce today that they picked up his 5th-year option. So contractually, he's with the Saints for at least 2 more years, right?
So through 2020.
Well, there.
Right, through 2020. That price tag in the final year is going to be pretty high, but I think the Saints can be able to work out some contract extension for him in the offseason. Saints have some really good strategies that they're going to have to put into play to sign all these talented young men, man. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Hold on one second. Sean and Alan, can you guys hear us now? Hello? Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to reach out to you guys and see if I could get you guys in the queue in a different manner. So go ahead, Bob, continue, and I'll try to get these guys in.
Okay, no problem. Saints fans, back to the offensive line. We talked about the tackles. But as you know, center Max Unger announced his retirement this offseason. And although the Saints did sign Nick Easton to compete with, and he's probably the favorite to win the starting job at that position, but he's there to compete with Will Clapp, second-year player out of LSU, and Cameron Tom, who the third-year player who the coaches are really high on for those interior spots. But something else to keep an eye on and be aware of as we enter this draft. Andrus Peat is in the final year of his contract, and he's already carrying a $9 million cap hit. There are a couple of interesting interior line options at offensive guard or center that the Saints may want to explore early or mid rounds in this draft. A couple of very intriguing prospects there. So that's something to keep an eye on. And then defensively, and I just released a piece today on a fine edge rusher, defensive end from Akron, Jamal Davis. The Saints did draft Marcus Davenport last year to team along with perennial All-Pro Cam Jordan, but their depth at those outside defensive end spots might be a little bit sketchy. After Jordan and Davenport, you do have Trey Hendrickson, who's given the team some solid play, especially as a run stopper, a 2017 third-round draft choice that they still seem pretty high on. But after him, the cupboard might be a little bit bare, so don't be surprised if we see the Saints kick some tires on some edge prospects as well. and then the linebacking core. And as we get our roundtable formulated this evening, we'll kind of go around and discuss some different position options or potential surprises. But this Saints linebacking core was more athletic and disruptive than we have seen in a number of years. And we can owe that to a solid, healthy season from Alex Anzalone, as well as one of the better free agent signings in franchise history by bringing in Demario Davis. Now, their third man in that linebacking running trio was A.J. Klein, who had himself a very solid season and is still a good player. I think he is at age 30. But Klein will also be heading into a contract year and carries a rather high cap hit that, in my opinion, could make him a potential cap casualty for June 1st cutdowns to save some salary cap space. There are some linebackers in this draft, some more traditional linebackers that lend some very good versatility, something that these Saints defensive coaches demand out of their defensive players. So there are a couple of good linebacking prospects that I would be absolutely pleased if the Saints brought in and spent a draft choice on, perhaps even as high as the second round. And then, as always, we always talk about the quarterback position here, especially with the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees, his contract situation is fine. His play is still at a Pro Bowl level and continues to be so. But he is 40 years old. So unless the clock starts ticking backwards, anybody who analyzes the New Orleans Saints are going to be talking about the unpleasant subject of life after Brees. A quarterback prospect that the Saints have been linked to in some circles is a guy I do love in this draft. It's Will Grier out of West Virginia. Now, Grier is projected to go anywhere between, I've seen him go late in the first round projections to early and mid-third round. If he is sitting there at, say, mid-second or even late second when the Saints are up to pick, will the New Orleans Saints take that chance? I know Kyle said earlier, and we covered on the Under the Dome show last night, how you do want that second-round pick to be an impact on your team this year.
Right.
Now, obviously, you're back.
Yeah. All right, guys, you're in the queue? Sean Allen? Okay, I thought I had him in.
We've had some serious gremlin problems on the Bayou Blitz in the last couple of weeks. Have you noticed?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Okay. As I was saying, obviously a selection of a quarterback like Will Grier would not lend credence to how these Saints do in at least you hope it doesn't affect how the Saints will do in the 2019 season. But you spend a second-round draft choice on a quarterback, you are basically saying you expect that quarterback to be your quarterback of the future. Obviously the question that would have to be answered, do the New Orleans Saints feel comfortable enough about the rest of their roster to basically say, we're going to take our quarterback of the future right now, and then we'll see you guys on day 3, and we'll see if we can unearth some special teams help and bolster some depth for what we feel is a Super Bowl contending team. If you're going to take a flyer on a quarterback, now when you have this type of roster is probably the time to do it. And Grier is a fine prospect. He's a gunslinger. He was very productive throughout college. Do I have some company?
Can you hear us?
I thought it. Hello? Well, I'm sorry, folks. Some gremlins continue to attack our show, but we're still putting along. And I mean, hopefully you have enjoyed our work through both the Canal Street Chronicles and the Saints News Network. We've been trying to cover individual draft prospects. We've been throwing out a few mock drafts at you or potential draft strategies. As I'm sure it has gone through your own mind if you've followed the team, there are so many different directions that this Saints franchise could go. I, for one, do believe, or I would be surprised rather, if they did manage to trade their way into the first round. There are two very specific scenarios I could see, though. As we know, Sean Payton, general manager Mickey Loomis, and head scout and director of college performance Jeff Ireland, they have their short list of big board draftees. And if one of their top prospects that they believe should be gone in the first round starts to slip and maybe becomes more reachable in this mid-second round or even early second round, I think the Saints may move some future draft capital to go up and get that prospect, regardless of position. We've just outlined some key positions that we think that they could or should address. Another thing that I think would happen, especially if that second round scenario didn't happen, I would bet a paycheck that the Saints will end up with a pick in either the third or fourth round this year. I just find it hard to believe, even with a roster this talented and as much confidence as these coaches have in this roster, I find it hard to believe that they would sit there with only one pick in the top 100 and then waiting until day 3 to really swing into full action. Now, of course, those that follow the Saints or the NFL in general, you realize that there have been so many great players to come out of the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, or even as undrafted talents. You look at the Saints alone, Marcus Colston and Zach Strief, two future Saints Hall of Famers, were both 7th round selections. David Onyemata was a 4th round selection. Pierre Thomas was undrafted. Willie Snead and Lance Moore, two receivers who have had some great success with the team, were undrafted free agents, although Snead was undrafted from a different team. So don't think that just because your team doesn't have a first-round pick that they aren't going to bring in some talented players. I mean, you even look at Mr. Breeze, who, of course, was drafted by the San Diego Chargers. He was drafted in the 2nd round, remember. Now, that was before the current league expansion. Breeze's selection would have been at the tail end of the first round with the number of teams, 32 teams that are in the league now. But Alvin Kamara, 3rd round selection. Michael Thomas, 2nd round selection. So this team has done a fine job of drafting in later rounds or doing their scouting for undrafted free agents. So if you look through our mock drafts and different prospects that we've highlighted, most of us have tried to give you some names of players who aren't being talked about in the first round, but maybe worth bearing some attention to, as the team gets ready to draft in day 2 and day 3. And I'd like to,
This conference is being recorded by the organizer.
Receivers and or tight ends. And while I think that those are going to be important additions and things that the team is going to add, I've been looking at the team's linebackers and a couple of specific safeties. And one linebacker who I won't lie, I have fallen in love with as I've done my my player profiles and film studies, is a kid named Jermaine Pratt from NC State. Pratt is the kind of guy, he has been productive throughout his college career, made the All-ACC team last year and led the ACC in tackles. But he's a guy that can play either inside or outside. Personally, I think he's going to project to an outside, either weak side or strong side linebacker in the NFL. But he is a converted safety. He got to the Wolfpack as a safety, and then after his first year and a half, they moved him to linebacker. So he has those coverage skills that you need in a linebacker, able to even some sometimes in the in college pick up some tight ends or wide receivers in the slot.
Okay. Hey, Bob. Hold on one
second. Yes, Kyle. Hi.
Hey, Sean, are you on? Okay, guys. I apologize. Hey, but Barry, are you on? Huh. None of these guys are patching through. Barry's in the queue. You can see him, but he's not coming through. All right, guys. Well, continue. Let me try to get these guys on another way. Hold on.
Okay.
Keep going.
Pratt. Pratt is a guy that he can play both inside or outside. He has terrific sideline to sideline range. I love the way he just knifes through blockers while in lateral pursuit of a ball carrier. And he has a great burst into the backfield and has a good closing speed. He has terrific blitzing skills as well as great understanding of the different types of zone coverages that linebackers often have to play. It's not all about taking up man-to-man coverage, as you know. But Pratt is a guy that I'm really excited about. Most projections have him going in the third or fourth, but this is the kind of player, and, we see it every year in the draft, where teams take a guy in the first round or even second round, and everybody says, I can't believe they took this guy this early. Jermaine Pratt might be one of those guys. And I for one, I would not be upset at all if when former Saints great running back Deuce McAllister, who's going to announce the Saints second round selection, if he walks up to the podium and he says, with the New Orleans Saints selection, they draft Jermaine Pratt, linebacker, NC State. Saints fans, you should be happy with that pick. We talked about the situation with A.J. Klein, the contract situation. Now, they have Davis and they have Anzalone. But outside of that, their depth is a little bit thin. The Saints did re-sign Craig Robertson, who also has the versatility to play inside and outside and is kind of a tackling machine when he is out there and a terrific special teams player. But I think a guy like Jermaine Pratt or another guy I like a lot is Bashan Joseph from Florida.
Okay.
Do I have some company?
Hello, do you hear me?
I hear you. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. All right.
I know a way to go on the air. If I use a curse word, I promise you it will come through.
Okay. Well, hold on. Let me get Alan, man.
Okay.
Well, keep
Bob, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. Saints fans, I know you recognize this voice, but this is one of the co-hosts to our friends from over on Under the Dome. This is Sean Williams. Welcome to our little fiasco this evening, Sean.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be with you guys. And once again, I want to thank you guys for returning the favor by joining us last night. And to kind of illustrate the point that you were making at the beginning of the show, talking about the Saints and their draft, it being like Christmas, I can relate to this Saints draft in that respect because for those who don't know me personally, my birthday is exactly 2 weeks to the day after Christmas. And growing up, the older that I got, people just stopped giving me Christmas presents and would give me one big gift on my birthday. And that's kind of the way this draft is for the Saints because we don't get to celebrate on Christmas Day. We kind of get like whatever happens a day, a week, whatever after. And that's kind of the way this draft feels for the Saints fans.
Yeah, it does a little bit. But you know as well as I do, and we talked about it on part one of our Intertwined podcast draft preview last night. There are still some very talented players that even if the Saints sit tight and don't make their first selection until number 62, there is still a big list of players on both offense and defense that could be an immediate contributor to this team. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. And I think to further illustrate your point, you look at recent history, and by recent history, the tenure of Sean Payton. You look at just exactly the kind of mileage that he's gotten out of later round picks, undrafted free agents, players that all Saints fans will recognize, like names like Marcus Colston, Pierre Thomas, those kind of guys. You don't have to have that splash pick at the beginning of the draft. It helps, obviously, because as you go through the draft, the talent level, the maturity level, the possibility of a seamless transition, that all those things are going to go down as you move further into the draft. But there's always going to be that diamond in the rough that you find in the later rounds. And I think that this scouting department, as you've seen in recent years with the impact that drafted players have made for the Saints and undrafted free agent signings, have the kind of impact and the kind of minutes and plays that these guys have logged. I think that the Saints would probably be at the top of the list of teams that make use of those type of guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I don't think that this scouting department headed by Jeff Ireland, who was brought into the fold in 2016, I believe, or right after the 16 season, somewhere in that time frame, I don't think that they get nearly enough credit for putting this roster together. And that is essentially what they've done. I mean, yes, they have brought in some key free agent acquisitions, Demario Davis and Larry Warford, the offensive guard, being right at the top of the list. But this is, outside of them, this is a young team who is all coming into their prime at the same time. Should be a scary prospect for the NFL leading into this season. And they were all drafted in 2016, 2017, and you throw Davenport into the mix as an 18, Davenport and Will Clapp into the mix as an 18 draft pick. These are all guys that are only 25 years old or younger, coming into their second or third year in the league. That's scary.
It really is.
Maturing at the same time.
It really is a scary concept, and I think that you're seeing a living illustration of the fact that the writing is on the wall for the New Orleans Saints. They realize, and I hate to use this term, but it's one that most people can relate to, that window of opportunity that all of these talking heads refer to, that you're going to have with Drew Brees running the show on the field. That window of opportunity is rapidly closing. We've pontificated about it on both of our shows. If you see the Saints, let's go back. The NFC Championship game, the play with Tommy Lee Lewis never occurs. The Saints go on. They win the NFC Championship game. They win the Super Bowl. Drew Brees is gone, period. And I don't think that there's any Saints fan alive that doubts that. Now, to get that close and to be unfulfilled, that is not the way that a true competitor like Drew Brees wants to write the epitaph of such a storied career that he's had. So he's going to make another run at it, and he has the weapons in place. Yeah, there's a few potholes here and there on that road, but there's not any glaring position of need, in my opinion, that the Saints are like, well, if we don't do something with this number 62 pick right here at this position, we can count ourselves out. This team is solid from top to bottom. If there's any reservation to that, in my opinion, if there's any reservation to that, it would be depth. Because depth, and as we talked about last night, wide receiver. Because as the season played out last year, we saw down the stretch that Michael Thomas was the only real receiving threat that we had. You can depend on Ted Ginn if he's healthy. And the same can be said for Teron Armstead. As you alluded to earlier, Teron Armstead has not, in his career thus far, has not put together a 16-game season. And that's unfortunate, but I mean, it is what it is. You have to address what is and not what might be.
Now, Sean, let me ask you something. And for those listening now, if you didn't have a chance yet to listen to our first part get together on Under the Dome last night, go back and do so. You'll hear what Sean was referring to as far as I think we outlined the wide receivers or potential wide receivers in the second round, rather, pretty extensively. But Sean, what I'd like to ask you now, and while Kyle is trying to get our roundtable together, I was talking about, the more I think about it, I see a deep receiver class, and as I was doing my research, there are some receivers that I think are going to be some potential studs available in day 3. So I was talking about maybe going defense at pick number 62. If that's the route that they go, I was talking about a linebacker, Jermaine Pratt from NC State, and I love 2 safeties, one Thornhill from Virginia and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from Florida. But say they go defense, are there any players or positions that you can see them addressing or that you kind of have on your big board?
To me, if you have made up your mind that you're going to go defense with that number 62 pick, and there again, we're taking for granted that they don't move up and give Sean Payton a shiny new toy earlier. If we're going to go defense, I think probably the position that I'm most concerned about is another. Golly, I hate to say it this way, but another Marshawn Lattimore at corner. Mm-hmm. Because, so many times last year, and I don't think that there's much debate that Lattimore didn't have the season this past year that he had in his rookie year. And I attribute that to, people get tape on you, and the sophomore slump is a very real thing. People get tape on you. They study you. They know how to beat you. Offense, defense, it doesn't matter. Position doesn't matter. When they get tape on you, they find weaknesses, obviously. But Lattimore more than held his own this past season. But on that other side, we saw P.J. Williams. We saw Eli Apple. And Eli Apple coming in the middle of the season to progress the way that he did to the end of the season was incredible. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about him, the form that he was able to attain by the end of the season. But you need more than 2 really good cover corners, in my opinion. This is a passing league. In the last 20 years, that's what it's come to. You saw the emergence of Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, and all of a sudden, Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, Dan Marino, Mark Duper, Mark Clayton, those type of offenses, and suddenly everybody wants to do that because it's exciting to watch, and you put a lot of points on the board quickly. That's the state of the league right now. You look at the devaluation of a position like running back, whereas 25 years ago, you had guys coming out like Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker, Eric Dickerson. These guys were guys that you could bring into your organization and build a team around. And now, not so much. to be a successful running back in this league, you almost have to be as talented a receiver as you are a runner.
Okay.
For sure. Alan, do we have you in the fold yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
he is in, but some reason, guys, we're not able to get his audio, and that is disturbing. So,
Well,
Alan's a much better audio guy. I'm more visual.
hey, let me ask you this, Sean. Can you call him three-way from your phone?
Let me see. Hang on one second. Add call. I'm sorry, I talk out loud.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Well, fans, what Sean was saying just a moment ago about cover corners. I mean, that does make a lot of sense. A good friend to all of us and to both of our shows, Quinn Early, when we had him on just before free agency, and we were kind of going through the different positional breakdowns. Even Quinn himself, and his exact words were, "You can never have enough good coverage players or good coverage corners." And there are a few that could fall to where the Saints could either grab them at 62.
Okay, Alan,
or not.
Alan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Alan, I can hear you. You're a little lighter, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'll get off the speaker
No,
here. And can you hear me better now?
Yep.
Yes, much.
Okay, all right.
Awesome. I just threw my phone across the porch.
Well, I can't believe to get on this show, I had to be involved in a three-way with Sean. Is that what this is going on? Is that what you send it into now? I gotta take a shower. Or something.
Hey, we got to know that you're really committed.
Uh-huh. Now I'm going, man, I wish I didn't get this on tape now. I wish his body was gone.
Oh my goodness!
We are the only two New Orleans Saints podcasts that you have to be seriously medicated to be a part of.
Or need serious medication after you've been a part of it, one of the two.
Exactly.
Well, you just got to go with what works.
Whatever.
Well, Alan Ulrich, welcome to the show. The other half, if I may say, the better-looking half of the Under the Dome podcast.
How much have you been drinking? Listen, Kyle, when he was introduced, was talking about how he's on the exempt list. Let me just tell you, I'm on the physically unable to perform list for about 30 years now. So.
Oh my goodness!
Well, we do welcome you, and want to thank you for being part of our part two of what's turning out to be a hilarious draft preview.
Oh, absolutely.
Alan, Sean and I were just talking about on your show last night. We pretty extensively covered the wide receiver possibilities that exist in the second round. And before Sean got on, I was talking about the possibility if they go defense. I had mentioned Jermaine Pratt, linebacker from NC State, a couple of safeties, one Thornhill and Chauncey Gardner from Florida that I love. And Sean was talking cornerback. If the Saints go defense or any other area for that matter other than a wide receiver, where can you see them going, or what kind of players would you really like to see in the fold?
Well, one of the things you were talking about earlier was Will Grier, the quarterback from West Virginia. I know Sean Payton wanted to take Patrick Mahomes a couple years ago, and given that there are no quarterbacks that will be on the roster next year because Taysom Hill's a restricted free agent, Teddy Bridgewater signed a one-year deal, and I believe Drew Brees' contract, even though he has a cap hit, His contract ends after this season. And everyone's kind of going on the assumption that win or lose or draw, this is going to be Breeze's last year. I can see them making a move for a quarterback only because it makes so much financial sense to bring in a rookie quarterback. You lower your cap figure, and Sean Payton would love to have the opportunity to have a quarterback battle between, and I'm just going to throw Will Grier in there, Will Grier, Bridgewater, and Hill, assuming that's the three he'll keep. Okay? So I can see them making a move for that. The question is, how high do you have to go to get a guy like him? If he starts to slide past, 21, 22, 25, 30, do they make a move for that? Because they can't get in the top 15. But do they sacrifice a first-round pick, and maybe they're second this year, to move into the bottom half of the first round and take a guy like Grier? That's something to watch for. The other position, and this is just real quick, the other position I can see them looking for a defensive tackle / defensive end kind of player. But I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, no, I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead with your defensive line.
I was looking at a couple of defensive tackles because you really don't have a three technique right now that you can count on that opening week because you don't know what's going to go on Yamada. I tend to this is my personal belief, and maybe it's a Saints fan in me. I don't think he gets suspended because the moves they are making or have made do not show that they should know whether he's going to be suspended or not. The front office knows.
Sure. Yeah.
But they don't act like, oh my God, we don't have anybody for next year. The opening first 4 weeks or 6 weeks, however long he may be suspended. So I can see them looking for someone who, because it's got to be a temporary guy, someone you would have to be able to put somewhere else. Because when we've already saw the story today that Rankins is going to be out of the boot, rehabbing some more, he probably won't. He'll probably start the season on the PUP list, but he's going to be there by October. Onyemata is going to be there. So where would you put a third defensive tackle? A three technique, you don't know. But if you can get a guy who can play edge and the three technique position, like they did with Rankins 2 years ago, they had him outside sometimes on the edge. I can see them trying to do something like that, but I wouldn't know where that player would come from. Would you take him in the second round? Would you trade up for a guy like that? I'm not sure.
There are two guys that kind of fit that bill, in my opinion, and I don't disagree with you. I think that they would need an inside-outside guy in that scenario. Draymond Jones from Ohio State and Joe Jackson from Miami each have the physicality.
That was one I was looking at.
To be able to,
definitely what I was looking at.
Now, those are neither one personally. Neither one are players that I would necessarily trade up to get, but that I would certainly consider if they were still sitting there at 62. But my follow-up question back on Grier was, and what you said makes so much sense, and I wouldn't have a problem with it except for this. If the Saints move some things to get up into the latter half of the first round or even early second, that then means you pick your quarterback, and I love the pick. I love Grier as a player too. Then you don't have another selection. And I've said many, many times that I've always felt that the Saints were going to come out of this draft with some kind of pick in either the third or fourth round. I think in that scenario you have to, because after that you pick your quarterback who's not going to have a say-so in the 2019 season. You hope not anyway. Then you don't have another selection until the fifth round. So if you make that move, would you then be burning up phone lines like crazy to try to move back into the third or fourth round, or are you sitting pretty content?
if I'm Mickey Loomis, I'm burning up the phone lines, offering things to get back in the third round because I'm willing to sacrifice 6th and 7th round picks to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you've got to do. New England's a team that's got a lot of picks. They've got 12 picks, I think. We've had relationships with New England before. Of course, whenever you deal with Belichick, you got to put one hand on your wallet and count your fingers after you're done. But I'm just saying, he is the shark. He really is. But he is somebody who likes to trade back and he likes to accumulate picks. So that is a potential trade partner for you. It's just a question of what are you willing to give up to get back into that third round? Because here's your other problem. If you take a guy like Greer, now you're going to have 4 quarterbacks on your roster. That's 4 spots. And it makes it so hard for you to sort of figure out, okay, where do I go thin on? Where do I go light on? Because I can't go light on my defensive line. I can't go light on my offensive line. So we're talking now we're keeping 5 receivers and 4 active on game day. Where are you going to have to go thin to make up for that one spot? So that is to me, that's the biggest negative about having a guy like Greer. Because I can't see them cutting bait with Bridgewater if you get Greer. I just can't see him doing that. They guaranteed his money. And Sean Payton's not about to give up his toy with Taysom Hill.
Well, I think that it's worth pointing out that we don't have talented enough receivers to keep a whole lot of them. There's Michael Thomas, and then there's there's Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
I alluded to this last night, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we needed a solid and dependable number 2 last year, and due to the injury to Ted Ginn, and guys, when Ted Ginn is healthy, he is everything that we need him to be at that number 2 spot. But I think at this point in his career, you're not going to be able to depend and formulate a game plan and a plan of action on Ted Ginn staying healthy. You're just not. And it is what it is. We need that wide receiver. And I think that it's going to have to be a step up or step out situation for players like Smallwood, Traquan Smith, Austin Carr, Kirkwood. Yeah, Smallwood plays for Philadelphia. I apologize. It's one of those woods. And Austin Carr and all those B-League, for lack of a better term to use, those B-League receivers that we have that are just like half a step above practice squad, they're going to have to either step up or step out. We need production from that position, and we're not getting it. Now, the addition, as I said last night, the addition of Jared Cook poses the very real possibility that number 2 is not going to be as needed, but it's still going to be needed. Because don't think for a minute that the teams that we play next year are not already game planning for stopping Jared Cook.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And on last night's show, guys, we all of us love the kind of speed that a Paris Hilton, Terry McLaurin, both out of Ohio State, or Deebo Samuel can bring. And the Saints have been linked to N'Keal Harry from Arizona State. Emmanuel Hall seems to be everybody's
best
latest
receiver in the draft. Receiver in the draft, N'Keal.
But also Emmanuel Hall from Missouri. But I'll tell you guys, as I was looking, there are some guys late in this draft, and I'd like to get both of your thoughts on any potential day 3 gems. But looking at
I've got one
potential.
I've got one for you right off the top. The kid from Clemson. I can't remember his name.
Hunter Renfrow.
Where's Renfrow? That's it. I think that he would absolutely thrive in the Saints offense.
I couldn't agree more. And a guy that I had in my Saints mock draft at the beginning of the month, and he is a deep threat too. Terry Godwin from Georgia. I love Gary Jennings from West Virginia, and also the other West Virginia kid, David Sills. Do any of those guys, or any other positions to either one of you, jump out as someone that you could say, you know what, if we can get someone like that in day 3, I'm going to concentrate on another position in round 2?
Yeah, I mean, I totally can see that. The problem when you start going into worrying about day 3 receivers is you've got too many Al Davises out there. Guys who will take chances on receivers who may not have the greatest hands in the world, but have speed. And they start looking at 40 times. And they think they can coach all these kids to catch, but you can't coach speed. So, you're starting to look at now guys like maybe the small kid, Penny Hart from Georgia State. He's 5'8", 179, but he runs a 4.37. I'm looking at a guy, and I hate to bring up guys like this, but you can't ignore bloodline. Stanley Morgan Jr. That is somebody who, is if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, isn't he Stanley Morgan's son, the old receiver from the Patriots, and I think he even finished his career with the Dolphins. I might be wrong.
He is.
Okay. So, and the Saints love affair at bloodlines. You've got Cam Jordan, Steve Jordan's son. You had Nick Toon on the team. They enjoy grabbing guys who were kids, former NFL players, because they already have in them the eternal discipline and, understanding what it takes to be successful in the NFL. And Stanley Morgan's not a speed guy. He's only 6 foot, 202, but he's an outstanding route runner. He has great hands. He played in Nebraska, so that program has kind of been on the downslide for a while. But he is somebody that I can see the Saints taking a chance on later in the draft to give them a good slot position kind of receiver.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love Stanley Morgan also. And we do know how Sean Payton loves those NFL bloodlines. He just gave some of the rundown, and there's a handful more. Heck, even Michael Thomas, cousin of Keyshawn Johnson. You grow up in kind of that NFL household, and there's a few guys in this draft that have those sort of bloodlines. Morgan, a tight end who I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints create some movement to get, maybe if he falls to mid-second round, Irv Smith Jr., son of former New Orleans Saints tight end Irv Smith. Alan, you mentioned him last night, the cornerback from Clemson. He has great speed and is extremely aggressive in coverage. Cornerback Mark Fields, son of the former Saints linebacker. He's probably going to be a day 3 selection to watch out for. Some nice measurables on him as well.
Exactly. And I just think that is something, especially late in the draft, you're looking at bottom of the 5th, 6th round kind of guy, maybe even 7th round if he slides far enough. Those are the kind of guys that the Saints will take a chance on. And Sean, you had pointed out earlier that
Sean Payton, the Saints historically as a franchise, but especially the Sean Payton regime, have had some success and really nailed, these day 3 selections. Now, having said that, obviously, as Sean, you pointed out, the later you draft a player, statistically, his chances for immediate success become lower. That's not impossible to be a success, of course. But, you want a guy, you need a guy, he's going to make his mark and he's going to make the team based off of immediate special teams contribution once you get into the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds. But guys, we did touch on it last night, but we haven't touched on it a whole lot so far tonight. The tight end position. How highly would each of you address tight end? We've talked about Jared Cook, and we all think it's going to be a major upgrade. Do you think the Saints still bring in another tight end somewhere in this draft because of Cook's age?
I do. Well, here's the thing, though. Because they took 2 that were undrafted free agents last year, so they knew they needed tight ends. But you're seeing these rumors come up now that maybe, Benjamin Watson isn't quite ready to retire yet. He may want to come back, may want to try one more season. And don't discount the fact that the Saints have been talking to him about that. I'm sure they have been. I'm sure that's a plan B if the draft doesn't fall the way they want it to fall. So I think if the draft unfolds perfectly for them, they do take a jump on something like an Irv Smith, or maybe later in the draft, try and trade back in. Oh, what's this kid's name? I'm fascinated by this kid. Well, you got Foster Morrow from LSU, who everyone talks about. But
yeah, but he plays for LSU, and the Saints won't draft him.
Yeah, I know that. No, it's the kid from San Diego State.
I know who you're talking about.
Butcher this name.
The white supremacist.
Kahili Warren. Did I say the name right? Kahili Warren?
Okay.
I think so. That's the way I've been pronouncing it.
Okay. Here's the thing that stands out about him. Aside from the fact he's 6'5.5", he is a former basketball player, and he excelled at being a rebounder, blocking people out. Wasn't a shooter. He just was a physical, defensive player on a basketball court. Sounds a lot like Jimmy Graham.
Yes, it does.
So, and this kid, he did play a little more football than Graham did, because Graham was only 1 year. But, he's a big target, likes to go over the middle. He's young. He only played 1 year prep football, but he did play, 4 years of college football. You look at somebody like him, he's probably a good developmental kind of guy, better than Dan Arnold. You put him maybe as your third tight end, let him work behind Hill and Cook, and maybe just like they did with Shockey and Graham, maybe next year that's the guy you turn over, to the number 1 job. But go ahead.
Just for the record, I'd like to state, and you guys can verify this because you heard me, I said the week after the NFC Championship game that Ben Watson would not retire and end his career like that.
You did.
It's not often that I get to be right, so I just I would like to point that out.
I do feel the same way, because I think he wanted to go out. If they would have made it to the Super Bowl, win or lose, he would have retired. But
Sure.
I think, he wants that one last shot at a ring. And he likes Drew Brees.
Well, I mean, it's a pardon the expression, it's a hell of a way to bookend your career, to come in with the Patriots and win a ring, and to go out with the Saints and win a ring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Saints fan or not, anybody that can sit and look at this team and not consider them to be a front runner for the possibility of playing in the Super Bowl next year is out of their mind.
Truly. We know that the three of us are out of our minds. But we need some company that can relate with that too. So on that note, to join our band of hilarity, I would like to welcome Barry Hirstius of the Saints News Network. You're on the line with us, Barry.
No, not yet. Hold on, Bob.
Okay.
Does one of us have to hang up so Barry can get in?
No.
No. That's our show.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is true.
But
there's only so much the hamster can do at one time.
Yeah, that hamster's hyperventilating and going into defib.
You guys do bring up a great point about Waring, though, and he's a guy. The more film I've seen on him, the more I like his game. Another kid that I like, a real athletic prospect too, and I think he's also a former basketball player, is Josh Oliver from San Jose State. Right after I think it was East-West Shrine game, it was either that or the Senior Bowl, people's stock on him was through the roof. And that's kind of cooled in recent weeks. So it's making me think that both Oliver and Waring are going to be available at least when that fifth round rolls around. So I'm with you. I don't know. I tell you what, if the opportunity to grab Irv Smith is there in the second, I don't think I'd be able to pass that up. Otherwise, I don't think I would make tight end as nearly as high a priority, but it'd be tough to overlook an athletic, natural receiver, and both these guys are, Waring and Oliver, good natural hands with tremendous athletic ability to be able to develop into that Peyton offense. So that could be a couple potential exciting pickups too.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out. Maybe I'm the only one, but I'll play the devil's advocate. Jared Cook, when we look at his body of work, it's not like he put together a career like Tony Gonzalez, like Jimmy Graham. He's been like, he had one good season in Oakland, and as Bob alluded to, he's 32 years old. Exactly what are we now? Absolutely, he had a standout season a year ago, and he's trending up at the moment. But exactly what are we getting with what we bought? I have a hard time placing a lot of stock in the fact that he's going to just tear the league up the way that everyone is just automatically assuming that he's going to.
Yeah. Here's the thing with Cook. And I got laughed at on another Facebook group page on the Saints, because I did put it in those terms. That if you look at his body of work and you throw out the outlier, the year that he was with Oakland, then you look at what the Saints have done with tight ends, and you remove Jimmy Graham from the equation. You start with Billy Miller in 2006 and go all the way to Ben Watson in 2017 and 2018, I'm sorry. You see a tight end that is a position that somebody who catches about 40 or 50 balls a year and maybe 4 to 5 touchdowns, but people are giving him Jimmy Graham kind of numbers because of what Breeze did with Graham and what Breeze did with Antonio Gates when he was in San Diego. And you've got to borrow a line from Larry David, you got to curb your enthusiasm about that. Yeah. Because this is a Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara-driven offense. You're not taking your touches away. You're bringing in a tight end like a Cook to take some pressure off, but then you're not taking those catches away. No. Their job is to make Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara's jobs easier. Yeah. So that's how you have to look at a tight end position.
Yeah.
Now, sort of like an alternative to first down throw to Michael Thomas, second down throw to Alvin Kamara. Well, they're going to throw to one of the two of them. Well, then there's this big tight end over here.
Right.
You just need something else to add into the mix.
Give me a guy who may catch 4 balls in a game. But 3 of them convert third down to first down.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy. I'm thrilled because we're extending drives.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, that's kind of how it's going to be.
Yeah. Hey, Barry, are you in?
Yeah, if it doesn't cut me off again.
No, we can hear you.
It's been that kind of
I
night,
can hear
Barry.
you, Barry.
I'd like to welcome Barry Hirstius of the Saints News Network. Thank you for joining us, Barry.
Barry, can you hear us?
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can hear y'all, but it keeps cutting me off.
No, we can hear you. Go on.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. Fire away.
And I know, Barry, you put out a mock draft yesterday. We've kind of been running through different scenarios, as we all have, it always feels like forever by this point that we've been doing it. But different kind of scenarios that we think is going to play out. First and foremost, how do you see the Saints playing out their number 62 pick? Do they stay there? Do they move up? Do they move back? And give us a couple of names that you see happening with their first selection.
Well, I don't think they're going to move up. I think they're going to stand pat. Just a feeling I got. I was at the press conference Monday evening. As a matter of fact, I was sitting right next to Mike Detillier. And it's just the impression I get. I don't think I wouldn't say never. You never say never with this team because anything's possible. And obviously, they're one of the more aggressive franchises when it comes to the draft and free agency and that type of thing. But I just get the feeling that if you're going to move up into the first round, you got to have assets. You got to have something of value to give up. What's your biggest value? Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. You think they're going to trade one of those guys? Not. That's not going to happen. So I think they're going to stand pat at 62. I think they're going to go with the best player available. Me personally, I just feel that they want to upgrade that slot position. Cam Meredith, he's a wild card, and he replied to my tweet earlier today, which was nice, but I think he took it as a compliment. I actually probably meant it as more of a slight because I just don't trust the guy that his knee is fully healed. I just don't think. I think that they rushed him back too quick, and I'm not completely convinced that he's still 100%. So we'll see. I guess we'll find out in OTAs when the OTAs get started here next month. But I just think they want to when Snead left, they lost a little something. Tommy Lee Lewis or whoever they tried to throw in the slot, and if they even put Thomas in the slot at times. Now, obviously, Thomas can play the slot with no problem, but you want a quick guy, you want a fast guy in the slot, and so I can see a Deebo Samuel. I could see I just picked Paris Campbell because of their notable affinity for Ohio State University players. But you could pretty much put anybody in that spot. You could put Hardiman from Georgia. Again, Deebo Samuel, Andy Isabella from UMass. I mean, there's a couple guys you could throw in there. I wouldn't even rule out tight end. I heard Alan just talking about tight end. I agree with Alan that Jared Cook is 32 years old and he's not exactly he's not exactly the next coming of Travis Kelce or anything. But the only thing that I would disagree with is that he's a significant upgrade over Josh Hill. Okay, yeah, Josh Hill's a great blocker, but as a pass catcher, no. and Jared Cook far exceeds Josh Hill as a pass catcher. So that's the upgrade in my opinion. But I do agree with Alan that the focus of the Saints offense goes through Kamara and Thomas. That's indisputable. So, but again, this team, and I've said this on other programs that I've been on, this team doesn't need to do much. This is a team that was one play away from the Super Bowl. We could argue that they would have went into the Super Bowl and could have beat New England if they would have played their game. You know, they would have played their A game, so to speak. So there's really no need to do a whole lot of tinkering with this roster. You just need to fill the little hole. Obviously, Unger retiring, that gives you a little bit of pause because, you know, Nick Easton, not really a proven guy, got a little bit of an injury history. So I'm a little shaky on him. I gotta see more before I say that he's going to be the answer at center. Obviously, they've got Cameron Tom. You can even throw Will Clapp in there. So I think they'll be okay. Would it shock me if they drafted a guy that could play guard and center at 62? Not at all. Wouldn't shock me in the least. And again, I could even see him going tight end. I could see the Sternberger kid from Texas A&M. So, but then I heard you allude to they can go in the middle rounds and get a kid like Josh Oliver, which I totally agree with. So there's a bunch of different ways to go. The bottom line is, because I know Kyle wants me to keep it short, the bottom line is this team doesn't need to act out of desperation. They don't need to. They don't need to do a lot of tinkering or a lot of messing around with what they've already got in place. You know, address some of your holes. Maybe address the center position. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to have is Dwayne Washington really the answer as the third string running back? Maybe he is, maybe he's not. So maybe you even see a running back slipping there. I heard Alan talking about he got laughed at. Hey, I got laughed at for suggesting they might look at Will Grier, the quarterback from West Virginia, at 62. People think, hey, that's legit. Don't kid yourself for a minute and think that everybody who thinks that Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the heir apparent, I wouldn't be betting the farm on that just yet. Is it?
Well, I'll go you one further, Barry. I'll say this. I said this last year about Baker Mayfield. Will Grier is the most pro-ready quarterback in this draft.
Yep. Absolutely, and that's the whole reason why they went to go look at the kid. I mean, I know they went to go see Sills and Jennings, the two receivers. I grant you that. But don't kid yourself. They went to go look at Grier, too. Okay? Believe me when I tell you that. So, and I have that on good authority. So that doesn't mean they're going to take him, but the option is there. You can even look. Maybe even a kid like Brett Ripien, the nephew of Mark Ripien that played for the Redskins in the 90s. You could even throw him into the mix as a fifth round possibility or something. So you just never can say never. But the best thing about it is that this team doesn't have to be desperate. They can just play it however they want to play it. And look, there's invariably, and Alan and Sean and all you guys, you all know this. Invariably, somebody's going to fall. Somebody's going to slip through the cracks. And when they get on the clock at 62, somebody that we all are going to say, wow, how is he still there? I guarantee you it's going to happen. Now, whether he's still there when the Saints, when they actually get on the clock, if some team beats them to it by one pick, you remember the year, I think it was Cleveland or whatever, that jumped ahead of them and got Danny Shelton. Of course, that it's debatable whether that turned out good for him or not. But it's happened to them in the past where a team has made the pick like one or two picks right ahead of them. But bottom line is, I guarantee this is one of the I can't remember. Man, it's been a couple of years. A good while, a good stretch that I've seen a draft this deep at several positions. Now, some positions are weak. I think the quarterback position, outside of maybe Grier and I like Kyler Murray. He's a great athlete. I don't know how he's going to turn out as a pro. Everybody wants to project things now. Everybody's going to be the next this. Everybody's going to be the next that. Yeah, well, you don't know that. I mean, it's speculation, and even what we're doing, Now it's speculation. So, you don't know how these things are going to turn out. I'm sure Alan and I could go back and give you a list of names as long as our arm over guys that were supposed to be superstars in the NFL that turned out to be complete busts, like a Tony Mandarich or somebody like that.
Oh, yeah.
So it happens all the time.
Ryan Leaf.
And you got to stress this every year because fans, they get so caught up in the hype. And look, we grew up as fans before we became journalists or writers or podcasters or whatever you want to call it. We were fans at one point. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, but every single year the draft is a crapshoot. The guy that you think is going to be a superstar turns out to be a bust, and the guy that you think he'll be all right is the guy who actually becomes the superstar. So I just like where this team is at. I heard Sean talking about Drew Brees and the window of opportunity closing, and I completely agree with that. I think he hurt his shoulder in that Atlanta game. If you guys know what I'm referencing, in that Atlanta game, he threw the interception. He went to go make the tackle, and I think he might have that shoulder that he had the surgery on, and that he took the hit on. What was that, 2015 against Tampa Bay in the second week of the season, where he wound up missing the next week at Carolina, and Luke McCown wound up starting. Same shoulder. He took a hit on that shoulder, and the next week at Dallas, he wasn't the same. And honestly, he wasn't the same the rest of the year. He had his moments. He had his moments where he looked good. But if you remember in that playoff game against Philadelphia, he dropped back to pass. He had a clean pocket with nobody around him. He underthrew Ted Ginn by at least good 2 or 3, maybe 4 yards. And easy interception. I forget the Eagles defensive back that made the interception, but it was poorly underthrown. So I think he's losing a little zip on the old ball there. I think he never really was much of a deep ball thrower to begin with, but he's always been completely, he's always been accurate. I think maybe he's lost a little bit of speed off the old fastball there, so to speak. And come on, he's 40 years old, and it is what it is. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's in great shape. I wish that my body was in as good a shape at 51 as Drew Brees is at his age. But that said, it's inevitable. And Alan and Kyle and Bob and you too, Sean, we all know. We're all of age now. We know. It's a little harder to get out of bed once you start getting around 40, 41, 42. You don't get up out of bed as easy as you used to. I don't care how good a shape you're in.
Well, Barry,
just a bit.
Well, look, Barry. The problem is, at least you guys make it to the bed. That's good. Okay. So,
I hear you.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and thank you for keeping it so succinct as always, my friend.
Yes.
Well, look, guys, we're about to wrap up in a few minutes. Bob, any last questions for the fellas?
I'd like to get a final prediction on each side of the ball. I mean, we've each thrown out names. We've each thrown out our predictions and mock drafts. I'd like to hear from all of you guys, and you too, Kyle. You've been so busy trying to deal with technical difficulties. I'd like to hear from all you guys who the first name is going to be as the draft pick of the New Orleans Saints, be it late tomorrow night or the more likely scenario as midway through Friday evening. Who's going to be the first draft pick of the New Orleans Saints in 2019? Let's start with you, Sean.
I have 2 names, and both of them are going to draw. Well, they'll just tell me to get back on my medication. That's all there is to it. But the 2 names that immediately come to mind are Will Grier and DK Metcalf.
DK.
I gotta ask how do you think they're going to get DK Metcalf?
I see a lot of names. Well, as we discussed last night, none of the four of us believe that when it comes right down to the nut cutting, so to speak, Kyler Murray is going to be that number one pick. And that's going to throw things into chaos. And I see the Saints possibly moving up. They need that receiver. They are willing to make a deal to do so. And to me, DK may be the best possible choice. Either him or Keneal, who to me, the kid from Arizona State is head and shoulders the very best receiver in this draft.
Okay.
But if I was to stake something on it, I can see them sitting, as Barry said, sitting at that number 62 position and waiting, and a Will Grier fall to them. Wow. And as I said, in my opinion, Will Grier is the very most pro-ready quarterback in this draft.
That works. That would cause some waves, but I have some feelings about that on myself. How about you, Alan?
Well, first off, the DK Metcalf somehow slides all the way down to where the Saints have a realistic shot to get him. Somebody better take the crack pipe away from all the other 31 owners of the NFL, because somehow they all blew that, because I'm telling you, DK Metcalf's a top 10 pick. So it's just that's just my feeling on that. I can't see him getting out of it. He's too much of a aside from the bloodline bit, he is too much of the workout warrior. You fall in love with the way he looks. So, I mean, he's the number one receiver. They all, 4.3 speed, built like that. I mean, that's like Aquaman walking out there. People are going to be grabbing him left and right. But anyway, not to accuse Sean of being on medication, but he needs to be on medication like that bit. I said this last night. I go to bed every night looking at a picture of Paris Campbell in a black and gold jersey. So, I mean, that is probably the number one guy on my list, because he's a Ohio State guy, or I should say New Orleans Buckeye. He's a speed guy, great slot guy, can probably kick out to the outside, be a number 2 receiver to eventually replace Ginn. He's just pro-ready. He's ready to go. Deebo Samuel, of course, is in the mix there, Riley Ridley. But if I had my number one guy, it's going to be Paris Campbell. And I'll throw Will Grier out there, too, as a dark horse. But if we go get Will Grier, if we're going to draft Will Grier, we're going to go get him. We're not going to wait for him, because, like Mike Detillier says, you go after two people in the draft. You go after a guy who puts points up on the board, and that's what a quarterback does, and a guy who puts that other guy on his butt, a defensive end pass rusher. We did that last year, which is why we don't have a first-round pick this year. So those are my two biggest names, I think, that we will probably see the Saints get within these first 2 days of the draft.
Right. How about you, Barry?
Yeah, I'm with Alan. You saw my final mark for Big Easy Magazine. I like Paris Campbell. I agree. I totally agree with Alan. They have an affinity for the Ohio State football program. They just love that. There's something about that program. It's maybe they consider it a mirror image of their organization and how it's run and the efficiency and all that type of stuff. I think that even if they had to move up a few spots move up in round 2, I don't see them trading trading up in the round one. But to Sean's point, I could see him trading up a few spots up into the round. If let's say Campbell's sitting there, let's say 57, 58 somewhere, I could see them trying to leapfrog somebody to go get him. And then I agree with Alan on that second point as well. I think their plan B, so to speak, if Campbell's not available, would be Tyson Debo Samuel of South Carolina.
Absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
Guys, as a track coach, I do love it. Kyle, where do you see them?
Well, I just think they missed that speed element. And if you caught my final mock, I mentioned it in one of the paragraphs as I'm describing Campbell. And I say the Saints historically under Sean Payton have always had that type of guy. They've had that Devery Henderson. They've had that Robert Meacham. They've had, they've always had that speed guy, and Ted Ginn, going to be 34, 35 years old coming up this summer. I think he just turned 34 actually. So he'll be 35 next year. Point being, he's no spring chicken. Hey, look, still fast for his age. Let's not kid ourselves, but he's getting a little long in the tooth, and as Alan said, he'd be almost the perfect replacement for Ted Ginn.
Man, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm right there with you guys, man. But the only caveat I have is I think if Jay Sternberger is around and Paris Campbell is off the board, they're going to go with him. Or they could go and Irv Smith seems like he's dropping a little bit. There's a possibility if he is somewhere around
they like him.
45, 46 to 48, they may jump a little bit to get him as well. So there's always those possibilities there, but Paris Campbell is my guy as well, man.
Okay.
All the UMass kid, I like him.
Isabella.
Yeah. I love him. Guys, I've been trying to go against my very nature. Everybody knows me knows I'm a track guy. And I love Paris Campbell. I absolutely love Andy Isabella, more than just their speed, especially Isabella. That boy can catch. He is a fine route runner, a lot of wiggle in his slot routes. And I like Terry McLaurin a lot, too. He might be only a tick or two slower on the stopwatch, but probably a more refined route runner than Paris is. But I don't think that's the direction they go. I don't. It wouldn't surprise me if they did any of those three guys, and I would love any of those three picks. I think that if Will Grier gets out of the first round, and we always see is some chessboard maneuvering in those first 2, 3, 4 picks of the second round. If Grier slides past that range, at that point, I'm going to start to almost wait for Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis to make a move to go get him. I don't know that that's what will happen, but I wouldn't mind it at all. I'm in the minority, though, guys. I think they go defense. It's just call it a gut feeling. And my very first, and I think only mock draft I'm going to do, unless I stay up all night, I went with Juan Thornhill, the safety out of Virginia. I love Thornhill and I love Chauncey from Florida. Both can cover guys in the slot. They both have a lot of quarterback prototypes to their game. They're going to project as safety certainly in the NFL, but they can step into that cornerback role. Von Bell is going to be a free agent next year. I don't know whether Vaughn can pick up the slot guy pretty capably as he showed us last year, but I don't know that they're going to be able to sign him. I don't care for the safety depth on this team, and Marcus Williams, as we know, took a bit of a step back. Now, the coaches still seem high on him. Hopefully he can bounce back from that very real sophomore slump, as you pointed out. But I love Thornhill. I love Chauncey. And it wouldn't surprise me if they caused a few oohs and ahs by taking a guy earlier than what he's projected to go at linebacker, such as a Jermaine Pratt or who I love, or Boshawn Joseph from Florida. My guy, I'm dying with my boots on, and I'm going to say Thornhill. Thornhill is going to be the pick because I look at wide receivers, and although I'm with you guys, all of you, I love Isabella, I love Paris, I love McLaurin, and I love the kid from Arizona State, the bigger kid, Harry, and I know the Saints love him too. I just think that this is a really deep receiver draft, and I think that they can draft a guy like Godwin who can take the top off of a defense, or Jennings who can do the same, and a bigger guy that can do it on day 3. That's why I think they sort of address defense. I wouldn't call safety a need. I just see the depth chart and Vaughn's contract situation, and think that if either one of those two guys, Gardner Johnson or Thornhill from Virginia, are going to be available, I think that's where Sean goes. The Will Grier is the wild card, and I think every one of us pointed it out. Will Grier could be the wild card, and where I can almost picture Sean Payton with that little cheesy grin of, I know something that you guys don't know. And it wouldn't surprise me if the first name announced for the New Orleans Saints is Will Grier. But if they stand pat and the board falls the way a lot of projections show it, and the Will Griers and the Irv Smiths are going to be gone, I think that they're going to go Thornhill at safety.
Okay. All right. Well, good stuff, guys. Sean, Alan, tell us how we can follow you guys on the World Wide Web.
Sean, you first.
You can follow me on Twitter at DrewsDad3721. You can follow our show on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast, on YouTube, on Twitter, just any way that you look for us, we're out there somewhere. And once again, thank you guys so much for having us on tonight. And as well, thank you for joining us last night for our draft preview. Had a great time, and I hope that we're all right.
There you go.
Yeah.
And Alan?
Well, again, all the things that Sean said. I'm on Twitter as 79 Saints. I'm on Facebook. I'm in most of the Saints groups out there. I've been writing just for fun, kind of doing a history of the best players the Saints have ever drafted round by round. Yeah. And I even went as far back as when they were 17 rounds of the draft, and threw some names out there like Danny Abramowitz and people like that. But you got to include, the old drafts, because, you start looking at the 12th round and you get a guy like Jim Wilkes, who was a stud for us during the Dome Patrol years and the Bum Phillips years. So it kind of brings back some of these old players. And I'm all the way up to round 2. Round 2 will be out there tomorrow. And as I tell everybody, as I go further up the draft, there'll be more and more names in there. More and more Hall of Famers have shown up now. Ricky Jackson was a second-round pick, for example. Yep. So I'm throwing those things out just as an historical thing, so people kind of get an idea that, the Saints have had good players in the past. They just didn't have enough of them. So this year, we're finally seeing we've got enough good players to actually do something.
All right, good stuff. And Barry Hirstius, my man from Harry Hand.
Yeah.
How can they follow you?
Yeah, well, first of all, Kyle, I've been trying to get Alan and Sean both to come write for us at Saints News Network forever. But,
he just put you guys on blast.
But Alan's running out of time because all his kids are just about finished for school. So he's going to have to make a decision here pretty soon. But, of course, you can find me at Saints News, which, of course, is our wonderful Saints News Network. And then you can also find my work at Big Easy Magazine, which is at BigEasy_mag. And I have 2 columns a week for those guys. And during the regular season, pretty much just whenever I need to write something. So, but that's where you can find me. And hey, man, let's hope they knock it out of the park. I'm sure there'll be at least one pick that we're all going to say, huh? Because it happens every year.
No, huh? Who? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And Mr. Rose.
Barry, Alan, Sean, I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. In part 2 of our draft preview. Technical difficulties aside, it's always a lot of fun when we get together with you guys. It's a pleasure and a privilege to work with all 3 of you, and I want to thank you. As far as following me,
We've never had to work this hard to sound this unintelligent.
For me, it comes natural. So,
well, there is that.
But as far as if you are courageous enough to follow me, I am on Facebook, Bob Rose, or on Twitter at BobbyR2613. My work is through the Canal Street Chronicles. On Facebook, Canal Street Chronicles, or Twitter at ThinkCSC. And guys, you have been so instrumental in making this our Facebook group, our Bayou Blitz Facebook page, so successful so far. So if you aren't already a member, please send any one of us a join request. We'll make sure that you are welcomed with open arms, and that includes friends or family members. If you think they will enjoy what we do, get them involved in that Bayou Blitz group. It's very, very user friendly. We want to make sure we encourage everybody to have a voice there. And we have so much love for you guys that have made that page work so successfully so far. And we look for a lot more success. So we thank you for your support and your love in doing so.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Alan, Sean, thank you so much for being here. Under the Dome podcast, you can check those guys out every Tuesday night. And Barry Hirstius, you can follow his 18 writings a day at saintsnewsnetwork.com. And Bob Rose, my man, good stuff there. And you can follow everything on the Saints News Network at Saints News on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and whatever your mama wants you to have. This is Kyle T. Mosley of the Saints News Network, and we are out of here. Who dat, baby? Take care.
Yeah.
Good night.